In the land of the Headhunters on December 7, 1914, the movie was originally released in Seattle and New York. The movie was basically commercially unsuccessful because it was released after World War I started, and the audience were basically paying more attention to the war instead of to the film.
Well, the thing is that when Curtis started gathering footage for his film, the Coquitl and basically every other Northwest Pacific Coast tribe had already been exposed to European settlers for almost 100 years. So Curtis basically had to set up a lot of the scenarios, a lot of the costumes, a lot of the clothes and masks that people were wearing, because really the people didn't look as the romantic idea that Westerners had of the natives. So it was quite the opposite, really. They looked more and more Western. Edward S. Curtis. He's both a praised photographer and a criticized ethnographer. He dropped out of 6th grade and built his own camera, and then he started working at a studio at the age of 17. But it was really when he moved to Seattle, when he was 19, he bought his first camera, like his first professional camera, and started working, and he got exposed to a lot of the indigenous groups and the indigenous romanticism that was going on at the time. Curtis really starts out when J.P. Morgan, the financial mogul of the age, asked him. He commissioned him to create perhaps the most comprehensive collection of photographs of Native American groups. So this was a massive project, and it really took over Curtis' life. Well, in the land of the Headhunters, it comes in the midst of creating the North American Indian. That was the name of the collection of photographs. So Curtis had not only been photographing the Indians, but he chose the Coquitl group in the northwest coast of the Vancouver Island, and he had been recording footage, he had been recording music, and so he decided to create a movie. This was both, he was both trying to make money because the North American Indian was a very expensive project, and it was taking him more than he was expecting. But it was also because he was interested in working in cinema at that time.
George Hunt used to be I think he used to be a court translator or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he met this this big figure, Franz Boas. He's like the father of anthropology and whatnot. This was very important because George Hunt acted as a lead, almost like he made a lot of information accessible to Western anthropologists. And Franz Boas was the big one. He was the first one to say, look, when in a time where everyone think that this type of culture is backwards and it's had no value at all, he was the one, look, every culture has its own uniqueness to it, and we have to preserve it, because they all recognize that this was on their way out. So the time that Hunt and Boas worked together, Hunt got a lot of training, and thus, makes his involvement with Curtis's later film. We have to remember at this time, these practices were actually outlawed. When it was actually dying out as a lived experience, there were records like these for people, to reference and to kind of reconstruct a culture that was really, in a way, going out of existence through, the forces of modernization.
So while Edward Curtis was directing In the Land of the Headhunters, Hollywood was just forming at the same time. Audiences around the world marveled at how fast American films progress in terms of editing. Usually what happens in the story is there's two plots where the protagonist achieves a goal and it also underlies a love story. So during this film, it contains the essential markers of exotic and foreign, native, other, following the notion of that's them, not us. Well, the re-release of In the Land of the Headhunters was very successful in the 70s because it included warfare, headhunting, ceremony with elaborate costumes, elaborate masks, and dresses that were shown in this film. The re-release of this movie in the 70s changed their name to In the Land of the War Canoes.
Curtis and Boas, they were really into this idea of salvaging the dying race, documenting as much as possible before they're going to be wiped out. But then the question becomes, what happens when the race doesn't vanish?